First part of session 96 of the Law of One. How about we talk about synchronicities today? Let's begin. In this session, we're going to cover the first part as much as possible on the personal material that is what covers possibly 2/3 of the whole session. And I'm going to try to reach as far as I can and cover the rest in part 2. We're still not going to get into the archetypical mind, the Tarot study in this episode, but we're going to talk a little bit more of it at the end in part 2. This is around the time where things start to get a bit chaotic for Jim, Carla, and Don. And there is some background here if you want to read their commentary on session 96 in book 5, or you can go to the links that I have down below. There's a link to the lawofone.info, lawofone.info, and you can go check the commentary that Jim and Carla did for the respective sessions that they thought was necessary to give some commentary. And also, I think it's based on the sessions where they plugged in the Q&As that were taken out because they were not published in the original books. This is all stuff that you should know by this point, all the different versions that we have. And so the material that we're going to discuss is mainly that. So it's all about the moving into the new place and other questions about Carla and so on. So again, for the next 10 sessions or so, we're going to keep talking on the archetypical mind, some other loose questions of the cosmology of the Law of One and so on. But I would say that at this point, almost everything has been covered, and there's going to be more history rather than information, metaphysical information and so on. So I have to confess that when I first read the Law of One, this was about the sessions. I mean, once I started reading the archetypical mind, I had no idea what I was reading, and it felt very a grueling process. But once I got into this, I said, I'm not interested. There's a lot of information that I'm not interested, because I was all focused on learning all the timeless information, let's say. That changed over time, of course, as I became interested in every single detail that Ra talked about, and I read it. But yeah, we're gonna get into that sort of material here and there, and yeah, these are the last 10 sessions. So again, let's begin with the first question that we have, just so you know. And about synchronicities, they're gonna come towards the end, so the sooner we start, the easier and faster we can get there. Question 1, session 96. Don says, could you first please give me the condition of the instrument? As always, asking Carla's energies. Ross says the physical energy deficit is significantly greater than the last asking. Hooray, finally. There has been substantive lessening also of the vital energies, although the perquisite degree of energy of 4 mental emotional distortions of normalcy are yet available. So I'm not sure if we get the word perk from here, right? Because this is like a benefit or something that you derive from something. I believe that's the right word or definition for the word perquisite. But yeah, I think the greatest news at this point is that Carla's energy, physical energy, were actually, I read this wrong. The energy deficit is significantly greater than the last asking. So I take that back. See this Ross language. The physical energy deficit is significantly greater. So the deficit is greater than the last asking. All right, I have to take that hooray back. Less physical energies. And lessening also of the vital energies. All right, Don's going to ask about this and says, could you tell me the cause of the lessening of the physical and vital energies? Ra says, we found the need of examining the mental configurations of the instrument before framing an answer due to our reluctance to infringe upon its free will. Those concepts relating to the spiritual contemplation of personal catalysts have been appreciated by the entity, so we may proceed. All right, so really quick here. Dawn asked the questions as to why her physical and vital energies were lower. Ra's given the disclaimer that we had to check Carla's mind to see if we're not going to infringe on free will, and we find that she already basically has contemplated this personal catalyst. So they can talk about, we're going to see this reflected in this episode a lot, or at least a couple of times, where Ra says that we either know that you know and we can talk, or we know that you don't know and we can't talk. So we can only expand on territory that you already know when it comes to personal stuff. Otherwise, that would be infringing upon free will. And again, this is something that Ra is known for, because they didn't want to create more karma, I guess, between them and the group and anybody else for that matter. And we see that reflected in the whole material. So what can Ra say about this? They say this entity has an habitual attitude which is singular. That is, when there is some necessity for action, the entity is accustomed to analyzing the catalyst in terms of service and determining a course. There was a most unusual variation in this configuration of attitude when this instrument beheld the dwelling which is to be inhabited by this group. So some hesitation in terms of the moving and the things that they had to do there. Ra says the instrument perceived those elementals and beings of astral character of which we have spoken. The instrument desired to be of service by achieving the domicile in question, but found its instincts reacting to the unwelcome presences. The division of mind configuration was increased by the continuing catalyst of lack of control. Had this entity been able to physically begin cleansing the dwelling, the, shall we say, opening would not have been occurred. So in book 5, again, you can see that Carla is commenting on this and saying that they wanted to clean the house because the house was previously owned by drug dealers, and there was, a less than adequate environment there. It was dirty. It had the lesser astral energies, and so they had to do not only metaphysical cleansing but physical cleansing, so they would feel more at home, I guess. So Ra is simply describing her mind's attitude towards this type of situations and how they deal, or how Carla would deal with this. Normally that would be harmonious the way you do it, but there was some hesitation, and she basically wasn't sure what to do. Carla describes that Don he grew up in the Depression, the Great Depression of the 20s and 30s, and this was something that he carried over for his decision making in terms of hiring somebody to clean or replacing the carpet, and or having Carla clean all of this, but then it would have been detrimental for her physical energies. There was a lot going on in terms of logistics and what they could do. So this created disharmony basically in the group, very small disharmony. And we're going to see that this opening would not have occurred if she would have made a decision like she said she would, physically begin to dwelling, cleansing the dwelling, but she didn't. She goes on, or they go on actually, and say, although this entity, Carla, attempt clear communication upon this matter, and although each in the support group did likewise, the amount of Blu-ray work necessary to uncover and grasp the nature of the catalyst was not effected. So, lack of communication. Therefore, there was an opening quite rare for this mind-body-spirit complex, Carla, and into this opening, the one which greets you moved and performed what may be considered to be the most potent of its purely magical manifestations to this present nexus, as you know, time. So there was a lack of communication between all of them, not only from Carla, but from everybody else. And right, there was an opening. The amount of Blu-ray work necessary to uncover and grasp the nature of the catalyst was not affected. I'm saying everybody, but I guess mainly Carla, yes, because Carla had to express herself and say, I'm going to do it, or let's do it this way. There was some hesitation because I can imagine, I know what it is to be mindful of your money and not wanting to take a decision because it's going to cost money, but then, you kind of consider the other person and you don't want to trigger those catalysts. It becomes confusing and chaotic. Like I said, how do you deal with this type of situation when somebody has, it was Don basically who had this reluctance. I know Jim and Carla didn't work as far as I know, so maybe that generated something there between them. Difficult to say. Jim's the only one who is alive that could possibly elaborate a little bit more. I don't think it's necessary, of course, but in any case, there was just a lack of communication, at least from Carla to the others. And so what happened, the fifth density negative entity that had been following them for a while did its work. And this is, as Rod describes it, the most powerful magical manifestation to that point. And that was to what? Let's find out. Ross says, it is well that this instrument is not distorted towards what you may call hysteria, for the potential of this working was such that had the instrument allowed fear to become greater than the will to persevere, when it could not breathe, each attempt at respiration would have been even more nearly impossible until the suffocation occurred, which was desired by the one which greets you in its own way. Thus the entity would have passed from this incarnation. She would have died. So it was fortunate for her not to be sensitive to hysteria, to anxiety attacks. Because when something is happening to you and you add, of course, the layer of worry and anxiety and this uncontrollable thought of fear, then yeah, you're going to create a feedback loop for the body to worsen the situation, and in this case she would have died from suffocation. So she had a problem breathing. I think it was like for 30 seconds that she couldn't breathe, and every time that she tried to inhale she found it difficult. This was the work of the negative entity. And yeah, good thing she wasn't inclined towards hysteria, and she kept it cool. Some good lesson there for all of us, to keep calm and do whatever's happening, or allow whatever's happening, even if it's death that's happening. Why add that extra layer, right? But can we do that consciously? Well, it depends on how much work we have done to remain in the present. Because anxiety can only come from thoughts. It's not really a physical thing. It manifests physically, but it's not like a physical thing that just happens and you're there sort of calm. But with anxiety, it all has to do with thoughts. So how do we process our mental activity? Okay, so let's move on to the next question. Question 3, Don says, does this threat, shall I say, still exist? And if so, is there something we can do to alleviate it? Ross says, this threat no longer exists, if you wish to phrase this greeting in this manner. The communication which was effected by the scribe and then by the questioner that did close the opening and enable the instrument to begin assimilating the catalyst it had received. So in essence, the opening, maybe whatever happened there, maybe Jim and Don, right? The scribe is Jim, the questionnaire is Don. Maybe they talked to her and said, "What's going on? Is there something you want to talk about?" And that closed the opening and enabled the instrument to begin assimilating the catalyst it had received. So no more threat. Although Ra doesn't like that word, they call it greeting. Some people have an issue with this because, it sounds like, they're sugarcoating everything. In fact, I've had people in my Spanish channel who can get upset, because I don't talk about this in a terrifying way. But my channel is not one of those paranoia channels or fear porn channel, which, those abound in YouTube, where you can go, just the thumbnail itself is very sensationalist. And I know it's a clickbait and so on. But the information contained within is also of a fearful nature. I guess I don't rock that way. Good for them. But I like that Ra, it's not sugarcoating anything. There's always deep within the words that they use. When we use words, attack, offense, threat, these words are used from the illusory point that you are a victim of something else and you are completely innocent of what's happening. The more we start understanding our minds and the reaction of our mind to the world and the projection of reality through our minds, the more we begin to see that there is no subject-object relationship. Really, there is just, you are projecting everything. So there is no real outer world affecting me. You see, that's only from the illusory point that I exist as a separate being and I am subject to great things that happen to me and horrible things that happen to me, of which I am the doer, or I am the victim, I am guilty, and so on. When you start collapsing all of this, then you understand that there is a sort of transactional sort of relationship with the world. And it all starts here. So my view on this is that, first of all, Don, Carla, and Jim, they, especially Carla, used to talk perhaps too much, or to a degree that was too much. But Carla used to say that they were just curious people, that they were enlightened, mystical beings, and so on. So it's kind of funny thing how they were able to channel Ra, and Carla explicitly said this too. Like, they felt like they weren't worthy of it, which is, again, it's a sign of blockages there. So you see, it all pans out really well when you look at their behaviors and their attitudes, and they were just normal people, we would say. And so these openings were there, and also the attraction that they had to these entities, also normal. The vast majority of us are somehow accustomed to living in certain, I'm going to call it negative looks of ourselves, right? So it's basically, we are attracting these entities to do their work. Those are our friends, believe it or not, because we are inviting them unconsciously, sure, because that's the nature of third density. You are an unconscious being. You don't know anything about yourself. And so you work from there. This is why the spiritual work, at least from my point of view, spiritual work is to begin to become conscious of your unconscious behaviors, because they're all unconscious. The more you become conscious, then the more you can shine light and the heart can decide. This is what's called generating discernment in life, from the spiritual perspective, of course, of an informed adept who knows how to differentiate between what's right and what's wrong. What's right is that which is true. What's wrong is that which is false. Not wrong in the moral sense, if you follow me. So this is important for me to mention because, like I said, some people don't like, and it sounds like we're sugarcoating things or putting it, user-friendly and so on. It's not the case. We don't call it a threat or attack, at least I don't. We don't call it an enemy, something like that, because that is buy-in. Again, you're adding a layer of illusion that is not necessary, in which you are saying, I am perfect and these things are attached to me because I'm so perfect. No, you're inviting them. And so let's be honest, okay? We all like to think ourselves of perfect and godly and so on. Well, sorry, but that's not what God is. God is everything. And so, yeah, there's so much to talk about here, but the point is that you see how Ra says, this threat no longer exists if you wish to phrase this greeting in this manner. See, I've said, when I was doing the translation on the Spanish version, greeting is a word that doesn't translate really well to Spanish in the way that I read it here. A greeting is, you greet somebody, you're both acknowledging each other, you see. An attack is different. And from our perspective, an attack is that you are just, doing your thing and boom, somebody attacks you. You are not engaging in that willingly, I guess. So, yes, this is a small point, but I wanted to mention. Question number 4, Don says, the instrument asks, since this has to do with the house, is the house capable of being transformed by the painting and cleaning? We are able to undertake ... There's a pause. That is, we don't plan to put down all new carpets. Are the carpets that are there now acceptable? So this was the big issue, right? Don continues and says, I want to either bring this particular house up to acceptable limits. You say it will be neutral after we do the salting. I have only a concern with the conditions of our work here. The physical location isn't that important. In fact, I don't consider this important at all. If the house is not capable of being brought up to good conditions that will afford us no problems of the type we have experienced, then I may select a different one. It's not that important. Would Ra comment on this? So again, all the issues with moving and should we move to this house? Should we not move to this house? And again, it's the dilemma in which they were living at that point. Ra says, it is of course the preference of this group, which is the only consideration in the situation for contact with Ra. The domicile in question has already been offered a small amount of blessing by this group through its presence. And as we have previously stated, each of your days spent in love, harmony, and thanksgiving will continue transforming the dwelling. Again, these are all great points to elaborate on how much we worry about things. Especially the doing. Should I do this? Should I do that? Should I clean? Should I organize things? Should I do feng shui or feng shui, depending on how you want to pronounce it? Should I do hire somebody who can do a shamanic ritual cleansing? What should I do? That worry is the same worry that Don used to have sometimes, which is acceptable and understandable. However, the root of the worry is what we need to see. Why am I worrying so much about single details? Again, with LL and the Raw contact, I can understand a little bit more because it felt like it was, some heavy work that they were doing. So the sacrifices that they all made for us to have this material is huge, and that's what I respect the most. But the root of the worry is what I'm talking about here, and how we can worry so much about things. And so you see how Don is asking all these questions about, should we do the cleaning? Should we move to another house? Is it better? I know the location is not important, but I want the house to be perfect, for the contact and so on. All legitimate questions. I'm not, saying otherwise. But that root of the worry, Ra says something very interesting, which is also my consideration or my thought. Let me give you a couple of examples of this. They say, the preference is yours. We can contact with you at any time as long as you have harmony. The place, the house, has already been offered. They didn't even move yet, but just their presence, it had a blessing on it, right? And every day that they spend in love, harmony, and thanksgiving, so basically living happy in the house, will continue transforming the dwelling. So here's my thing. Imagine you move to a house, right? And it's dirty, it's has broken things, and it's not acceptable for you to live. Would you worry about ritual cleansing and all of these things? Yes, it's filled with all kinds of energies and so on. You can move there, not worry about a thing, and little by little you start doing the changes that you want to do. You start rebuilding the house, fixing things, replacing broken devices and appliances and plumbing or whatever. You start putting the work. There's no worry. That alone, without doing any ritual cleansing, will transform the house. You just doing all of that in harmony, just happiness. I would even say that none of the ritual cleansing was necessary if they would have moved in and simply enjoyed their life. Hey, maybe we don't feel like doing the raw contact yet because it feels dirty. Let's not do it. Let's wait. Why? What's the rush? All these things, I'm just saying, to me, the mind is infinitely more powerful than anything else that we can do physically. So it's just my view. I don't buy that things need to be in a pristine condition for things to be viable for us spiritually and so on. But we all have a degree of cleanliness, and as long as we feel satisfied with that, then that's great. And of course, yes, there's also something to be said that your cleanliness around you, the way you're organized and how you do things, speaks of your inner self. So, if you're accustomed to certain mess, then you're accustomed to certain mess inside. If you have dirty outlooks, then that speaks of dirty inside mental activities. All of this, it's there. But that's the purpose of us continuously becoming aware of what is it that we are. You see, this is not about saying, I need to become this way. No, just keep being who you are and simply find those things that you want to change, or that you feel that, this ought to change. This gets into behaviors and everything, but I won't go into that. The point is that if you live in harmony, it doesn't matter where you go, you're going to bring that harmony with you. Now, they continue saying, it is correct, as we have previously stated, that physical cleanliness is most important, just like I said. Therefore, the efforts shall be made to most thoroughly cleanse the dwelling. In this regard, it is to be noted that neither in the dwelling as a whole, wherein you now reside, or in the chambers of this working, is there an absence of your dust, earth, and other detritus, which is in toto called dirt. In toto. I had to look for that expression, and I don't know where it comes from, but it means in totality, in its entirety, right? Or because the detritus is this, which actually falls in my house a lot. I don't know if it's because of the carpet or just because I live in the forest, but there's a lot of dust, and they call it dirt, but detritus is mostly organic stuff. Like, you know, that I think it's like 80% of the little things that you see flying in the air is organic, like dead cells and organic, like organic stuff, feces actually. I think also 80% of what we have in our shoes is fecal matter. This is, you know, this is not dirty. This is just part of the environment in which we live. So no matter how much, don't fall into, you know, the super paranoid cleanliness, clean hygiene person. I mean, if you are, then that's great, but I think that's a little exaggerated. It's too much worry. But also don't feel so lax that, you know, you have actually fecal matter around you. You know what I mean? So cleanliness is most important indeed. But there is and they pointed out, you know, you will be cleaning everything and so on. But it is to be noted that neither in this dwelling or as a whole, or, you know, in the chambers in which you're going to, neither in this place or any other, basically, where you reside, any other place, there's going to be an absence of dust, earth, and other detritus, which is this organic stuff that is flying around. So it's going to be dirty to a degree. Just keep it at your best, whatever you consider. And you can see this because, especially if you're married or if you've lived with somebody, you know that we all have different degrees of what we call acceptable dirtiness or cleanliness. And that's fine, you know, it's just a combination of that which you make a living with somebody else, but we all have an acceptable amount of dirt around, and that's okay. There's always going to be some dirt. What the raw contact has come to. Talking about cleaning the house. All right. They continue saying, if the intention is to clean as much as is physically possible, the location, the requirements for physical cleanliness are fulfilled. It is only when a lower astral entity has, shall we say, placed portions of itself in the so-called dirt that care should be taken to remove the sentient being. These instructions have been given. So I'm not sure what they mean there, like they reside in the dust. I guess this is the purpose of always cleaning your house, because you don't know. I mean, you want things to flow. I would say this is the reason why in nature there's so much peace always, except in stagnant waters and places like that, which, not surprisingly, we have always depicted swamps and, you know, these muddy places as being kind of dark and not full of life, because there are these lower astrals, which, again, they don't need to be negative, on the negative path, but that's what they represent. You know, they represent the dirtiness, you know, the down to earth physicality of things and decay and so on. That's just that, you know, it's like a code in the program. So we feel that. We don't want that around, of course. We want to be surrounded with something that is vibrant and always flowing. So I think this goes into Chinese, like I said, feng shui. I think that's the appropriate pronunciation. Speaking of pronouncing things, pronunciation. Okay, so cleaning. Lastly, they say, may we note that just as each entity strives in each moment to become more nearly one with the Creator, but falls short, just so is physically spotlessness striven for but not achieved. In each case, the purity of intention and thoroughness of manifestation are appreciated. The variance between the attempt and the goal is never noted, and may be considered unimportant. The fact that you want things to be clean, the fact that you want to be more divinely aligned with the universe and so on, that's what matters. It's not the degree. It's not how spiritual am I and how spiritual are you. These are arbitrary distinctions that we create and we attach to them. So, like I said, it's fine if you want to live, you want to sweep the house every day or every week or every 3 days. That's fine. That's fine. As long as there is an intention to keep things clean and you feel comfortable in that place. That's it. You don't have to go crazy about it. That's my interpretation. At least, like Ra said, the purity of intention and thoroughness of manifestation are appreciated. The rest is unimportant. It's not noted. It's never noted. All those attempts, and the goal. No. That's not important. Next question. Question 5, Don says, the sequence of events that I am considering, which may be easily changed, is first the painting, then the cleaning, then the moving in of the furniture, then the salting and use of garlic. Is the sequence as good as any other sequence, or would a different sequence be better for those events? Ra says, any sequence which results in the cleansings is acceptable. It is to be noted that the thresholds are not to be crossed during the cleansing, since such stricture upon use of the limen may affect, limit is another word for threshold, which I'll explain in a little bit, may affect your considerations when we make note of this. Since such strictures upon use of the limen may affect your considerations, we make note of this. Okay. All right, so Don is asking here just a sequence of how we paint, we clean, we move things, and then we do cleansing, ritual cleansing. Ra says any sequence, it's fine. As long as you do all these things, obviously that's fine. But the thresholds, which I'm assuming the thresholds of the salting, for example, are not to be crossed during the cleansing. So maybe they would do the cleansing with, I think it's 36 hours that they suggested. So you do that, you do the cleansing, and you don't cross that threshold of, say, the doors and other places, kitchen and so on, I guess. And they use thresholds, and then they use limen, which is, it's almost like it's not a physical threshold. It's, for example, a threshold of pain, that is, or a threshold of society. Oh, that's what limen, as far as I understand it, means. So, yeah, this, I suppose that's the barrier, or what is the magical thing that's happening in this cleansing when you do the salt and the sprinkling of the water and so on. It's just my guess. I'm not sure. Let's move to the next question. Question 6, Don says, was the unusual sound of the instrument's tape recorder that occurred while she was trying to record her singing a greeting from our 5th density negative associate? Ra says, no, rather it was a greeting from a malfunctioning electronic machine. I don't know about you, I'm a joker. I enjoy these kind of things, and I feel like Ra is joking with Don. Or maybe it is so, I don't know. Yes, it's true. Recorders can do a greeting, like they say. I don't believe so. I think this also describes how Don was becoming a little bit paranoid. So this is what happened with Don. He became ever more paranoid and fearful of certain things, especially of losing Carla, as Carla herself describes it. And that's what led to his demise in the end. And you can see it here. Like, Carla was recording her singing, and suddenly the recorder malfunctioned. And so Don is asking if it was, an attack again from the fifth density negative entity. And Ross says, no, it's just a regular malfunctioning of the electronic machine. But I do like that Ross says it was a greeting from a malfunctioning. I don't know. I hope you can see the joke here. I see it. I think they did. Don presses on the issue and says, there was no catalyst for the machine to malfunction from any of the negative entities then? Is that right? I mean, it just was a function only of the random malfunction of the machine. Am I correct? Ross says, no. So Don says, what was the origin of this malfunction? Ross says, there are two difficulties with the machine. Firstly, this instrument has a strong effect upon electromagnetic and electronic machines and instruments, and likely, if continued use of these is desired, should request that another handle the machines. Somebody else needs to touch the machines. Also, there was some difficulty from physical interference due to the material you call tape caching upon adjoining what you would call buttons when the play button, as you call it, is depressed. So here is a sixth density description of a cassette. How many of you remember cassettes? I would suppose the majority of you, because the majority of you are from my era. Yeah. Remember the Walkman? What happened to the Walkman? Remember rewinding your tape with a pen? I think it was a pen that you could use, or a pencil cap, and you just jam it in there and do it faster than a machine. That was pretty cool, right? Things that kids will never know today. But again, I was not around for vinyl records and those long plays or whatever, so I don't know anything about that, and that's how it works. So a lot of kids who grew up in the 2000s learned about the wild internet, which is no longer available. See, it's become ever more sanitized over time. In any case, cassettes. This is a sixth density description of a malfunction of a cassette, period. But also they talk about something else, which is really what prompted them to say, no, it wasn't just that. It's also that Carla has this electromagnetic interference. We have all met people who simply damage electronics, and we say, what's wrong with you? Nothing wrong with them. It's just that they have this electromagnetic thing in their bodies, and they tend to damage electronics. It's a very common thing. If you're in these circles and you know about this stuff, you would hear people talking about this. My wife herself is she doesn't damage electronics, but somehow computers react in behaviors that I've seen. I myself, who am a geek with computers, and a nerd to a degree. My son, my friend, who very much know things about computers, sometimes we see things that are, how did he get this error? We don't know. So these things happen. That's I don't know. I think there is some metaphysical thing going on here. There's definitely something metaphysical in terms of electromagnetic fields and so on, but I'm talking about there's something interesting happening here between. Remember, the computers are basically the function of crystals, right? And crystallize silicon, right? That's what it's all about. And then there is information flowing through. So yeah, I guess that has an effect, because we are also that. We are crystals, so to speak, and we channel information. Same thing as a machine. And yeah, I guess that caused some interference in some people. I don't know. I really don't know how this works. But I do know question 9. Don says in question 9, how is Ra able to know all of this information? Don is curious. This is a somewhat unimportant question, but it is just amazing to me that Ra is able to know all of these trivial things. What do you do? Move in time-space and inspect the problem, or what? I love Ra. They say your former supposition is correct. Your latter unintelligible to us. If you see, uh, first, they do move in time space. They do move in time space, so they are able to see what happened, in the records of time, I guess. And so, yes, they can move to what happened to Van Gogh. Why did he slice his ear? What really happened there? Well, they can talk about it and maybe not infringe upon free will, right? Because they can see all of the records, everything that has happened. It's like having access to your own memory, which you should, but you don't because you have the veil. So that's what they do. They can check everything and anything, but they don't talk about everything and anything because free will. But they can do that. And we all can, because we're all the creator. In any case, the funny part is that Don asks, do you move in time space and inspect the problem, or what? That's we don't even acknowledge this as a question, but I don't think they are naive, although they say they are naive, but I think that was a joke too. And if it wasn't, then it was an unintentional joke for me. Your latter unintelligible to us. We don't know what you mean by what. Oh, they're so cute. I love him. The things I enjoy about this channeling. Question 10. Don says, you mean you move in time space and inspect the situation to determine the problem. Is that correct? Ra says, this is so. Don continues and asks in question 11, sorry to ask the unimportant question. I was thinking of the future readers and that they would be totally mystified as to how much, and he pauses, was there a significance with respect to the hawk that landed the other day just outside of the kitchen window? Ra says, this is correct. We may note that we find it interesting that queries offered to us are often already known. We assume that our confirmation is appreciated. To me, Ra is being kind of cheeky might be the word. They're kind of like nudging Don here in certain directions, especially in this one. Here's where we get into synchronicities, right? And we're gonna end with this conversation, right? Yeah, we're gonna end with this soon. Mystifying to me. Yes, this is the synchronicity part. So this is what happened. This is also described in the book 5 material. And what happened was that they got into the house and this hawk, big hawk, apparently 4 feet wingspan, landed. I don't know where it was, on the deck or outside the house. It was just right there near them. And so Carla and Jim appreciated this as a sign of a good sign, like, yes, we should move into this house. But Don didn't. Again, we can see Don deterioration happening already here. He thought it was a sign, no good, we shouldn't move into this house. That's why he's asking this question. So a little bit of context helps. Don was starting to become a little bit fearful, maybe paranoid, and he thought that this was a sign of don't move into this house. He was afraid. I mean, when you are afraid, you look at all the signs as being something bad, So Don here in this question is saying, was there a significance with respect to the hawk that landed the other day just outside of the kitchen window? Was not the deck, outside of the kitchen window. That's beautiful. I mean, I don't know about you, but if I see a hawk or an eagle or something like that, I would just say, wow, what a great sign. I have no idea what it means, but what a great sign. Just the view of it would be gorgeous, right? And I'll give you some of my interpretations my own experience interpreting synchronicities. I'm going to call it synchronicity from now on because that's what we started calling it now in the new age lingo. So, and I like it. I like the word synchronicity. It's coined by Carl Jung, if memory serves. And I love Carl Jung. So, we may note, this is what Ra says. Well, first, it is correct, right? They are validating what Don thinks. But they also say, we note and find it interesting, right, that you ask questions that you already know the answer of. We assume that you just simply appreciate our confirmation. This is very common, and I get it a lot with people. Not a lot, but I would say a good portion of the questions that I am asked, people know the answer, but they look at somebody else as saying you can confirm it. It's not a real question. And this is why I always suggest to people, especially if I'm working with them, sit with your question. See if the answer comes up, because your answer is there. If you can see the answer, then I may help you. But sometimes it's questions like, I'm hungry. Should I eat? Really? Why do you need my confirmation that it's okay for you to eat? That kind of stuff. And some people do that, with spiritual questions. I guess at the beginning it's fine, and that's why at the beginning we see so many, we can call it basic questions, but they're not basic questions, really. There is no basic question, because all answers are basic. We just ignore them. We want complexity somehow. But yeah, something to keep in mind. The art of asking a question. Let me tell you, the art of asking a question is to sit with your question as long as you can. And if you can't find the answer, then definitely ask, somebody else who you deem is appropriate for that kind of question. So that's important. And Ra mentions it here. Don is going to continue, and we'll probably finish with this last question. It's a long one. Don says, and again, try to look into Don's mind here. He says, the appearance of the hawk. This seems to be connected with the concept of the birds being messengers in the Tarot. And this is a demonstration of this concept in the Tarot. And I was wondering about the mechanics, you might say, of this type of message. I assumed the hawk was a messenger, and I assume that as I thought of the possible meaning of this with respect to our activities, I was in the state of free will, getting a message through the appearance of this very unusual bird. Unusual, I say, in that it came so close. I would be very interested to know the origin of the message. Of course, the origin is the one creator. The mechanics of this are very mystifying to me. Would Ra comment on this, please? So you can see the worry, in Don's question. Like, he wants to know what's happening, why did this happen, and how does this happen? And Ra says, I'm sorry, I didn't even read what Ra said here. Did I? Did I not? I think I didn't. But they say no. They just simply say no, right here. They say no. We can't comment on this. So, synchronicities. Don is asking all these questions about, wow, the bird appeared. It's very obvious that there's a synchronicity happening here. He didn't say this. I'm paraphrasing with my own words. All of this happened. We're talking about the Tarot and the bird, and there's a synchronicity, significant happening here. Ra already said that there is, yes, it's correct that it is significant. But Don wants to know the origin and what is, and he even, he's getting ahead of himself by saying the origin is the one creator. So Ra doesn't say all or everything emanates from the one creator, because Ra has done this sometimes just to push you there, This is one of the things that I love doing in the direct path when I'm mentoring somebody, or even if I'm answering questions and the person is already in that state of abiding in awareness, and then questions arise, and we can do this. Rupert Spira is known to be so efficient at this, and I admire him. But the idea is to bring it to the essence. You know, if the question can be brought to the essence, this is what self-inquiry to me is. You know, when we are in that state and we can say, question, go ahead, tell me who is the one asking the question, who is and what is it. There's a twofold thing happening here. One, you can recognize the thought pattern that is creating the doubt and so on, and two, it's also placing you in pure awareness. So it's a beautiful thing to do. You don't do it with everybody because it doesn't, you know, you have to be in that state of inquiry yourself, so you know how to differentiate between the thought pattern and yourself. And so self-inquiry does this. So I kind of like, you know, when Don Ra sometimes pushes, you know, to that direction. All things are from the one creator. Instead of thinking that it's a chain reaction of something. No, everything's coming from the one creator. I know it's very mystical, it's very deep and so on, but it's a very efficient way of knowing or learning. So, okay, would Ra comment on this? And Ra says no. What happened with synchronicities in me? As you know, I became kind of obsessed with synchronicities at the beginning of my path because I felt that the universe was talking to me, and it was. That's what triggered my awakening. My awakening was not due to depression or a mystical experience even. I have a story that I'm not going to tell now, but of how these things started happening, or how I allow myself to see these things happening. But the point is that my awakening, or my calling, the awakening that started, you know, emanating from me, came from synchronicities. And so I became kind of obsessed with it. And one of the questions that I asked was, are there synchronicities that tell me, you know, no, to not do things, or, you know, that are based on fear? See, can synchronicities even be from negative beings? Like, can you be led astray? And the answer that I got right away was no, there is no possibility, because whenever you see a synchronicity, the feeling of seeing one is always positive. There's always something amazing. However, if you are fearful, then you will see symbolic things as meaning also fearful things. So I wish I could talk more about this with more examples, but I can actually give one example. There was a synchronicity that I had, a very strong one, that was telling me basically don't take that road. And I think I've talked about this synchronicity in the past, but it was literally a decision that I had to take in terms of, should I get this job to make more money, a lot more money, like completely transform my life in terms of economic needs, or should I continue my path of where I am right now? I was writing a blog at that time in 2019. I wasn't even contemplating the idea of making YouTube videos. And literally, that's one of the most long-lasting synchronicities in my life. It lasted hours, in which signs kept coming, in like ridiculous signs. And I decided, okay, now, yeah, the universe is telling me, keep going this way. Because I felt the emotion of going back to a laboratory again. Yes, they offered me almost twice the amount at that point. But going back to a laboratory, it just felt like, oh, no. And then following this was the unknown. In the laboratory, I knew what I was going to do. I knew how much I was going to make. And, you know, I knew everything I had to do. So I was fine. It was the known. So either I go into the known and it feels kind of ugh, or I go into the unknown, which feels exciting. And the only worry that I have is yes, my own anxiety to know what's going to happen. And here I am today. So that was a synchronicity, the only one that I can say. It told me no, but in a very positive way, So Don is actually seeing this as, no, it's a bad sign. We shouldn't move into that house out of fear. It's a very subtle thing, because you can be told no, but how do you feel about that no? It feels refreshing. Great. But not that no is because there is fear there. I had no fear going back to a laboratory. It just felt like, I don't want to do that, I don't know how to describe it. Again, I wasn't fearful. I could do that. I would have loved to do that to a certain degree, but not as much as this, which has developed. And I wasn't even close to doing what I'm doing right now. Not even a fragment. So yeah, I wanted to share that. No synchronicities are fearful. Period. I'm going to cover one more, I think. Can I? Yes. This is all personal material again. Don says in question 13, I was afraid that you would say that. Am I correct in assuming that this is the same type of communication as depicted in card number 3 in the Catalyst of the Mind? Ross says, we may not comment due to the law of confusion. There is an acceptable degree of confirmation of items known, but when the recognized subjective sigil is waived and the message not clear, then it is that we must remain silent. You see, very intricate answer here from Ra. Don is saying, so I see it that, it's like in card number 3, the type of communication depicted in card number 3, right? The Catalyst of Mind. I'm not even sure what he means. I don't think there is a bird there. Is there? I forget. See, I'm not good with symbology. Not at all. But the thing is that Don is wanting to relate it to card number 3 and trying to understand it from that point. And Ra basically shuts the door and says, we may not comment because of the law of confusion. And here's the tricky part when they say, there is an acceptable degree of confirmation of items known. So in your mind, you're seeing many things that are confirmation. Like the bird is a message and it's significant. It's a significant message. But then Ross says that when the recognized subjective sigil is waived, right? When you ignore that which you know and the message is not clear, there is where we remain silent. To not infringe on free will. So we're not going to interpret what the bird means at all. That needs to be you. And you know it is significant. Other people would have said like, oh, it's such a cool thing. I was moving into this house and a hawk appeared. Didn't even think that it was a sign for anything. Just say, it's pretty cool. Maybe it's a beautiful house. Or, oh, I don't like that. Birds like that landing on my house, that means, I don't know, they're going to abduct my baby. Who knows? They're going to take it away. I don't know. People can react differently and not even see this. But Ra is saying, you know what it means, or you know that it's significant, but you still haven't figured out what it means. You do it. You do the work. I cannot tell you. Tell you what, we're going to cover one more. And this, so we can do the transition into what's next. We're going to still go into ritual cleansing. No, this is the last one. So let's do this one, and we get into the tarot next time. Question 14, Don says, would Ra comment on the technique of blessing the water we will use to sprinkle on the salt? I assume we just sprinkle the water directly off our fingertips onto the line of salt, and also how much in general should be sprinkled on the salt, how wet we should get it. This is trivial, but I'd like to get it right. Ra says, the blessing of the water may be that one we have previously given, or it may be that one which is written within the liturgy of this instrument's distortion of the worship of the one creator, or it may simply be obtained from what you call your Catholic Church in the form of holy water. The intention of blessing is the notable feature of blessed water. The water may be sprinkled, not so that all salt is soaked, but so that a goodly portion has been dampened. This is not a physical working. The substances need to be seen in their ideal state, so that water may be seen to be enabling the salts. So this is all important for those who like to play with rituals and so on. Couple of things here, I guess. First, the blessing of the water can be various. They can bless it, they can take it from the church, or I forget what is the other one. I'm not sure, but they could either bless it or get it from the Catholic Church, which they do, their holy water. So once you get the water, the intention of blessing is to prepare the salt, I guess. Enabling the salt is what Ra says. See, the water may be seen to be enabling the salt, I guess, as a sort of activation of the salt and the capacity that salt has to remove this. I guess salt can be inert metaphysically, but once it is activated by holy water or something blessed, then it's, I don't know, I'm visualizing it as activating a sort of energy field, and that energy field is then moving, right? The energy field moves and rotates, and it produces, the cleansing. This is all in my mind. I'm not sure if this is how it works. So that's it, and don't sprinkle it too much that it's soaked, but that it's dampened. I guess that's fine. So that's all we got. I think we covered enough to go to the tarot. We begin with the tarot in the next part, and we're definitely going to finish the session in 2 parts. Conclusions. Synchronicities, like I said, are something that are part of our lives, and once you begin to get used to synchronicities, you would know that they are always bringing a sort of joy into your life, because they're fun. That's it. It's nothing mystical about it. They're just fun, and they show you reality for being fun. There's nothing more mystical or divine than fun, playfulness, enjoyment. That's what joy is. Joy doesn't have to be this, exalted state of mind. Joy is in everyday things. So enjoying everything. That's what it basically means. And synchronicities do that. They remind you of that. So whenever you see them, and this is coming from somebody who kind of obsessed with them and wanted to know, like, what else does it mean? Can I get another synchronicity for this? And you start demanding things from the universe, and that's not how it works. You're not demanding anything. You're just seeing the nature of what it is. It's like looking at a tree and saying, be more biological. That's it. That's all you get from the tree. And yet, that's a lot. That's a lot to appreciate in a tree, if you catch my meaning. So it's an invitation to the present moment. It's the best way I can describe it. Synchronicities are an invitation to the present moment, which is full of joy, full of love and appreciation. I have nothing else to say but remind you, in my Instagram I have been doing some content. There is some a new account that I've been using to post seldomly, but still I'm trying to post more in English, but it's all English based. It's about my mentoring and what I do. Some of the work that comes out is based on the questions that I get, the elements of my mentoring, which is recognizing the ego, learning how to meditate, the essence of meditation rather, not a specific meditation. I don't teach a specific meditation. I teach the essence of meditation. And what we call healing in the Western world, I prefer the word liberation, but let's call it healing as well, because we heal the mind by liberating it from the constrictions that we have conditioned the mind of. So all of this is the premise of my mentoring: ego, meditation, healing or liberation. These 3 are important, essential elements in the spiritual path, and yet I see that they are not fully recognized, that they are not fully appreciated. by the seeker in favor of many distractions that are out there. So if you want to know more, go there. You can send me a direct message if you're interested, and we can get talking about how I can help you with this, which I'm really, really happy to do so in whatever way it suits you and me better. I have nothing else to say, but Tarot. Finally, go back to the Tarot for those who are excited about it. I'm not so excited, but I'm still going to cover it because it's the law of one. Take care of yourself. Have a good day or good night, whatever you are. And I'll see you in part 2 of session 96.